What's up, YouTube? Capital G here. Gonna do a new segment I'm gonna call the top 5. Basically, the top 5 is going to be what I believe are the top 5 decks of the competitive meta right now. I'll probably do this about twice per format, you know, once a new set or a structure deck or a new archetype is kind of released, so on and so forth. So because I've got 5 decks to cover and I don't want to take all your time up, I'll just go ahead and jump into it. In the 5 hole, we've got 6 Samurai. I've got this up here because of, you know, recent tournament results, and mainly because 6 Samurai SHIEN is still a bitch to deal with. One of the things that I think is really holding true is that, you know, 6 Samurai are kind of replacing Dino Rabbit right now, where if you look at the numbers, and I don't have them off the top of my head, you can get legendary 6 Samurai SHIEN on the board much more consistently than a turn 1 Logia. I like the fact that the deck has auto win cards, like if you open Gateway and you're going first, you can just make so much advantage, your opponent can't overcome it. If you're going second, you can just OTK with it. This deck does have a very, very poor Chaos Dragon matchup, so that's one thing that you have to worry about because the deck makes all of its bread and butter off of inherent summons. 6 Samurai can struggle with that. The deck has a fantastic Dark World and Inzektor match. Against Dark World, you can make auto win cards like Nat Beast. Inzektors really struggle to make field presence against this deck once you can negate their Call of the Hauntings and all their key card plays. One thing I still really believe is that I'm not in love with the wind-up match. I know that Junior 2-0 to wind-ups in the finals, but I still really don't love that match. I don't see 6 Samurais having a huge edge in that match. And I think that this deck really doesn't play defense that well. And one of my biggest problems about 6 Samurais is if you lose SHIEN, you lose the match or you lose the game. And I mean, has anyone ever seen this deck get past turn 3 and actually have cards in their hand? It seems like if you don't have Gateway, this deck always runs out of cards by you know, turn 3. In the 4 hole, in the 4th spot, we've got Inzektors. The main reason is the fundamentals of this deck still work. That's Dragonfly and Hornet. The cards are still flat out amazing. I understand that they're both at 1 and they both got limited and everybody thought they'd be crippled, but when you have Centipede, which is a toolbox for the entire deck, it really doesn't seem that hard to get to these cards. You also have the fact that Solemn Warning really doesn't hurt this deck as much as you thought it was because most players are just main decking multiple copies of Call of the Haunted so they get a second shot at it. The deck has a fantastic Dark World matchup. It's the only deck in my opinion that has a good game 1 Dark World matchup because, you know, they can discard your key cards from your hand like Dragonfly or whatever. You just Call the Haunted, your Dragonfly back and proceed to blow up their field. Dark World basically have to have deck Devi to handle Inzektors. I like the fact that this deck has multiple OTKs at any point of the game really. You have Gigamantis, you have Swords, and you can use Dragonfly just multiple times. One of the things that this deck does suffer with is it can get turboed out like hell. You play against Chaos Dragons, and if you're struggling to make field presence, a deck like Chaos Dragons, unlike last format, can just run you over. And one of the reasons is because Inzektors probably play defense even worse than Samurai. You look at the power traps in the deck, cards like Call the Haunted, and they're not used for defense at all. They're used actually as offensive weapons to get more shots at your, you know, Dragonfly. Even when you try and use them defensively, they're just, if your opponent Heavy Storms or use back row removal, you just chain with, you know, to activate cards like Sangan and Card Trooper. That's not really defense. All that does is give you more options, but that doesn't help you if you're going to get OTK'd by Chaos Dragons or windups. My 3rd deck, I've got Dark World as number 3. The main reason is just game 1 domination that is completely unrivaled. And doesn't Dark World feels like it plays a little dirty? Like, doesn't Dark World kind of feel like it's cheating, even though the deck is actually not breaking any of the rules? And what I mean when I say that is, you know, they activate cards like Drag Down. They have cards like E-Virus and Deck Virus where they're always looking at your hand. So when you have setups like that where you're always looking at your opponent's hand and you have a boss monster that is like quasi unkillable, you know what I mean? It makes these games completely easy. I'm not in love with the fact that Dark World can just completely shut down and almost go into convulsions at the sight of a D-Fissure and a Macro, which, you know, you look at a lot of the top decks of this format and most of them can main one of, or can easily main one of those cards. So, you know, obviously Dark World has other options that it can side for that, but one problem that Dark World has always innately had is because it's like there's this perfect balance between what you can side in and messing with the consistency and the speed of your deck games 2 and 3. And, you know, once players finally figure out what that is, maybe I'll move Dark World a little higher. I know I'm higher on Dark World than most of the people are, but I mean, it is the fastest deck of the format, and I don't even think it's close. You have an unkillable with boss monster, and, you know, you have a game 1 matchup that just completely dominates almost every deck in the game except for INZEKTORs. I also love the wind-up matchup with Dark World. I think that's probably one of Dark World's best matchups. My number 2, Chaos Dragons. I kind of struggled about this one. Mainly, Chaos Dragons might be the only thing on Earth that's more aggressive than Joe Biden in a vice presidential debate. Oh my God, side note, did anybody see that? I thought he was going to punch Paul Ryan in the head. But, yeah. Chaos Dragons has an absolutely amazing Samurai matchup because, again, everything in your deck is effect-based. You really aren't relying on your spells and traps. I think the fact that this is one of the only aggro decks that I can remember in recent memory that can just fight through back row decks with ease. Mainly that has to do with Lila and Forbidden Lance and Starstrike Duelist so eloquently said, you know, where you have key plays like summon a Lila, they try on Bottomless or Torrential, chain the Lance, blow up another card, and it's like, you're blowing up 2 cards is almost like a heavy storm right now. And Chaos Dragons is one of those decks where it really does punish people for playing conservatively, and I think more players play conservative than aggressive, which is one of the things that makes this deck so appealing, where you have players who they don't want to commit many monsters to the board for fear of Torrential Tribute and Dark Hole. They don't want to commit too much back row for fear of Heavy Storm, and you know, a deck like Chaos Dragons just completely eats that up because it's just like Inherent Summon, Inherent Summon, Inherent Summon, dropping 2,400 beaters plus on the field, and you know, at some point your opponent just runs out of answers. This deck has a great resistance to hand traps and to magic and trap destruction because, you know, you don't really run anything that you can set. So Chaos Dragons is definitely, it's my number 2 mainly because of tournament results and because of just pure power. Like, it's that big kid on the block that at 12 years old, he was already 6'3" and 230 pounds, and it's like, who's going to mess with that kid? My number 1 deck is obviously Wind-Ups. The main reason is because the deck has absolutely no bad matchup in my opinion except for Dark World. You know, when you really don't have any bad matchup, it kind of leaves a lot of space in your side deck to kind of side whatever you want. This deck also has multiple 2-card OTKs such as Tour Guide Shark and Magician Shark, to where either you're going to have an OTK or you're going to have a pseudo OTK, where turn 1 you're going to have so much board presence and, you know, a couple of counters to where your opponent basically has maybe 1 or 2 cards in their entire deck to counter it. This deck has multiple 1-card exceeds. I'm talking Tour Guide and Wind Up Rat. Those are just completely nuts, where you top 1 card and just completely come back. And you look at Magician, Factory, and Shark, and it's just like they're all at 3, and you better enjoy them now because I don't think they're going to be at 3 very long. So the deck has that going for it. And one of the things that I like about Wind-Ups and why I believe it's the best deck, the deck makes so much out of so little. It's like you can combine any 2 random cards in the deck and you can make a whole board of monsters. You know, you look at things like Magician Shark, Tour Guide Shark, you know, Wind Up Rabbit plus Wind Up Rat, Wind Up Rabbit plus Magician, and it's like any of those cards that work in unison with the next card, like they're all ideal. So, you know, they're all unlimited, and it's like, you know, anytime it almost gets to the point where it's almost hard to draw a really bad hand with Wind-Up. So for that reason, for the max consistency, for no bad matchups outside of Dark World, and because the deck is winning the most, I'm definitely gonna have that in my top spot. So, and thank you guys for watching as always.